Very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this webinar series from Scope. This is the second event of this new webinar series that we had started, Substation Saturdays. We will wait for a couple of minutes to other people to join us, and then we will take it further. So we'll just wait for a couple of minutes.
Hello? Hello?
I hope that all your near and dear ones are safe and sound in these very uncertain times of COVID pandemic. The way it has created n number of turbulences and problems for us. It has also given us a lot of opportunities of implementing new things, finding out the ways and means of going on with our life in these difficult times where we have a lot of limitations and restrictions. But then that is a typical resilience of a human being. We will find out the ways amidst whatever crisis that we face. Friends, my name is Balasaheb Doifode. I am CEO of Scope T&M Private Limited. I am joined along with me by my colleagues. The presentation will be mainly conducted by Yash Kulkarni. He is our marketing head. And we are also joined by Akshat Kulkarni, who is the CEO for the Oxa Grid. What is Oxa Grid? I will come back to that so that you are clear about that. As regards to Scope, all of you are aware about the Scope as an organization and our activities. But for the benefit of those probably who are joining this webinar series for the first time, Scope is a 32-year-old organization. And our core activity is basically asset management. We had been developing testing and measuring instruments, diagnostic tools, creating innovative solutions for end-to-end asset management, mainly focusing on the substation equipments like circuit breakers, transformers, CTPTs, surge arresters. In last 10 years, we shifted our focus from, or I will not say we shifted our focus. In fact, we added one more important vertical in our operations, and that was protection. We are manufacturing and supplying control and relay panels, a lot of automation solutions, including RTU-based automation. And 3 to 4 years back, we came up with our own SCADA right up to the SLDC level. So these are some of the activities that we are doing in the protection vertical. Scope also has a separate company called as Isosceles Sales and Service Private Limited, which is devoted for the testing and commissioning activities, or basically the services which are required in the power sector. Because as we had been always very thickly communicating and associated with the customers, around 11 years back, it was told to us that, there are not many good testing and commissioning companies who understand really the testing. And Scope being a testing instruments manufacturer, there was a lot of push to us from our customers that why don't you enter into this activity, and that is how we entered into that activity. And we currently have a team strength of almost 200 people in Isosceles. With this background, in last 32 years, when we had been working in these two domains of asset management and the protection and automation, we had also come across some of the challenges. There are certain challenges which are probably common all over the world, but there are certain challenges which are very typical to the Indian environment. We have realized that when it comes to the automation and SCADA, there is a lot of monitoring happening at the transmission side or the generation side. But when it comes to the distribution side or the medium voltage, low voltage networks, even in the industry, there are a lot of challenges which come for the automation implementation of a system like SCADA. And one of the major challenge is actually the investment, the capital investment that is required at the beginning. There are a few other challenges as well. parallelly, there had been a lot of developments which are happening in the technology, which has also opened few more doors. And that is where, by looking at the pain areas of this particular customer segment, Scope partnered with Oxagrid. Now, Oxagrid is a UK-based startup company started in 2017 and primarily working in the domain of developing the smart IoT-based sensors, creating the smart algorithms, whereby using the machine learning, we will be able to facilitate the preventive maintenance, not preventive, rather predictive maintenance. And of course, a software which will not be very heavy when it comes to the capex investment and will use the latest technology, IoT, machine learning, and also offering innovative business model, in order to reduce the initial capital cost, maybe by way of offering a subscription-based software where you don't have to invest initially. You can grow with the requirement, you can test, you can first be assured about the product, and then you can scale it up. So this is how these two companies had come together and had decided to offer the solution in this pain area of LV network, where we will be offering the solutions by using these technology platforms which are now available, and we will be providing the innovative solutions to this particular segment, which is more dominant in the discoms and the industry. As is the name of today's webinar, the IoT solutions from Scope for the industry and discom, and primarily we are looking at the participation from this particular segment. So I'm quite confident that by end of this particular presentation, you will get the value as far as the topic of today is concerned, and there will be some trigger of thinking, finding out the alternative, innovative ways of achieving the eventual visibility and the automation that we want to achieve for our assets. The details about the various apps that are available that really help us to take care of our assets will be shared with you in due course of the presentation. So with this introduction, I once again thank you very much for joining us, taking the time off. As I had told you earlier also, let me give you confidence that your investment of time will be worthwhile and you will be getting the value at the end of the webinar. So with this, I hand over the proceedings to Yash. Yash, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, VR. You can hear me, right? I'm guessing everyone can hear me. VR, is there? Can you give me a quick confirmation that you can hear me? Because I was having some microphone problems earlier.
I can hear you.
I can hear you, but it is a bit low.
Yeah.
It's a bit low.
See if you can increase the volume a little bit.
I'll try to be as loud as possible. There's a small microphone last minute problems, unfortunately. Slide. Okay, perfect. So you can see the presentation as well now, right?
Yeah, we can see that. Okay,
great. So once again, thank you everyone for taking the time out on a Saturday, to come and be part of this knowledge sharing session on IoT solutions for discoms and industries. With this, I'll start my presentation. Oxagrid, we make IoT analytics for energy optimization, and I'll explain more in detail about what is it that we do. So to begin with, the contents for the presentation today, for the 1.5 hour webinar slot, will mainly be focused on. We'll start with challenges. What are the major challenges that are faced by our customers? globally, and the issues that they are facing, and then what are the available solutions for the customers in the market. Along with that, what is it that Oxagrid, what is the Oxagrid technology, the solution, and how is it that Oxagrid is better than its competition. And then we'll move on to a few sample case studies that I have identified to which would also help to explain our technology more in detail. And with that, we will conclude and then open it for question and answers. But before I move forward, feel free to use the chat room to write any questions that you may have throughout the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, we will allow 10 to 15 minutes where we will go through all the questions from the attendees, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. And in case if there is any other unanswered questions, we will definitely reach out and circulate those answers later on as well. Okay, so with that, we'll let's move into understanding what are the challenges. So at Oxagrid, from the research that we have done, what we understand is that energy systems globally are facing a decision to build infrastructure or optimize aging assets to provide affordable, sustainable, and reliable energy for all. Here I've highlighted two words which are the most important here. That the decision is between building new infrastructure or optimizing an already aging asset base to squeeze out some more throughput from the existing network without thereby being able to defer the heavy capital required for building infrastructure. So with that, what is it that I mean? Let's go a little deeper into it. So energy systems globally, the problem that they are facing, right? It's a three prone issue. The first issue is that the aging energy infrastructure is at a high risk of failure. By here, what I'm trying to say is that we all know that the a majority of the grids were built in the early 1900s, and since then they have only had incremental upgrades, which have been mainly to take care of the expanding or the increasing loads. In the photo as well, what we're trying to say is that now the entire grid network is so complex that it's very difficult to upgrade all at once, and requires a lot of capital to do the same. Along with that, we are at the pivotal point where there are a lot of distributed energy resources which are also getting connected on the grid. Right, your distributed energy resources are things like rooftop solar, or your distributed battery banks, things like electric vehicles, and talking about grid to vehicle and vehicle to grid, and all the complexity that comes around with these DERs. It's a challenge from the energy companies to manage them in an efficient way. And finally, along with these complexities, in a country like India, we still have a growing demand. Especially, it could be through electrification of the 1 billion people population. It could be through these electrifications of transportation and cooling and so on. So these are the challenges that are faced on the grid perspective. Coming to the challenges faced on the industrial perspective, which is the large energy consumers, right? Energy consumers, they too need to do more to reduce their energy footprint. There are these costs that are associated come from regulations, such as there's that push for reducing carbon emissions and reducing energy through fossil fuels and so on. There's also the desire for companies to adopt these DAR technologies, and then of course they need to also be ISO compliant to be able to meet their customer requirements and so on, like ISO 50001 for energy management and systems and so on. So with these challenges on the industrial side, the biggest problem is that when that happens is when companies rely on manual analysis of data to identify these inefficiencies, are ending up wasting time and money. The cost of relying on manual processes is, like we all know, I mean, there's lost time because there's a lot of manual work that goes on. When there's human involvement in the process, there are high chances of human errors as well. So it will be less accurate. And finally, it's not even going to be real time because these are not automated processes. So if you have to get data from one place, analyze it, take a decision, and then move forward. So 99% of the cases, this turns out to be a lot of reactive management than proactive decisions, right? So these are the problems that we face. Along with that, to increase efficiencies and reduce costs, companies need to incorporate more advanced monitoring strategies, right? So what are these? What am I trying to mention here? So this is typically the maintenance strategies that are adopted well on the grid side or on the consumer industrial side. Mainly, there are four strategies. The and each strategy has its pros and cons, right? So every strategy will ensure maintenance will ensure either minimal downtime of the assets and as well as at an economical cost, right? So a strategy like reactive maintenance, which is the one at the bottom most, that is nothing but you put an asset in place and then you operate it till failure. You don't do any maintenance on it, so you will have 100% uptime, but you will not know when the asset fails, and when it fails, replacing the asset or repairing the asset is quite expensive, and you'll have a lot of downtime on it. A level above that, which requires a little capital investment, is something like preventive maintenance, which is the most widely adopted strategy. This is mainly something like condition-based or time-based maintenance, where you can have that every 6 months you take the asset out of service. You will do some sort of maintenance on it. Maybe if your asset's a transformer, then you'll be doing things like the ratio measurement or the winding resistance measurement and so on. You do your test. You certify that okay, the transformer is still operating in good in permissible limits, and then you can put it back into service. So there is still a level of downtime that is faced on the asset side, as well as a cost for doing the maintenance on a timely manner. Um, the next phase or the next two phases are where we move the maintenance from preventive to predictive. So in predictive monitoring is where you are making use of intelligence and on in the use of real time data to understand what is happening on the asset, and you can take a decision to repair it before the asset goes into failure mode, right? So single node predictive monitoring would be like you are looking at a single parameter, such as again on the transformer example, it could be you're looking at dissolved gases in the transformer in the transformer oil to tell you that if the dissolved gases are going too high, that means that there is a chance of breakdown, right? So beyond certain limits, you can basically do a maintenance before problems do materialize. Other things such as partial discharge and any online monitoring tools usually provide you with this predictive maintenance strategies. And then finally, moving one more stage up is nothing but multivariable predictions. This is where you're looking at multiple data sets and multiple nodes to take your predictive decisions ahead of time. Typically, what happens on the predictive maintenance is that this results in it being more costly, a more upfront cost because you need to deploy systems and have them integrated into it. And it also requires a level of expertise to understand what is happening on the data sets. And that's why these are typically have been perceived to be more challenging and are not as widely adopted as the below two strategies. However, with IoT and AI becoming more and more prominent, these strategies can be more feasible, right? So on this slide, I'm trying to explain how AI-based solutions enabled with IoT, which is Internet of Things, are more feasible than ever, right? So some of the benefits that IoT and AI provide On a basic level, we all know that hardware costs are dropping, right? So sensor costs are lowering, and IoT sensors are more cheaply available today than they were maybe 5 years ago or so on. Um, so we have lower hardware costs, but we also have advances in data analytics, right? So now there are ready-made tools available from many major companies for simple AI models that you can deploy on your data set and then to get results. So so you don't need to build everything from scratch. You can use the techniques that have already been widely accepted, and there are software programs that will also tell you which technique is most suitable for your data set. So with these such kind of advances, along with cloud computing, lower cost for cloud computing, lower cost for hardware sensors, deployment of IoT systems is more feasible than it was before. And finally, the most biggest benefit that we can get with IoT and AI is that you can replicate an entire digital twin of your systems of your systems into a virtual environment wherein you can test your hypothesis and see what kind of results you get before you deploy any intelligence or any decisions on the real network. So that also gives you a playground area to play with your data sets. So with these technologies available, what is the solution in a nutshell that we can provide? Um, right. So the solution is that we can do an advanced algorithms based on real-time multivariable inputs with a focus on specific customer pain areas. So this is how we perceive the use of IoT and analytics from an Oxagrid perspective on solving the challenges in the market. Right. So the idea is that you should be able to understand what are the specific customer pain area and adopting the strategy that will most solve that problem instead of providing a generic solutions which are widely done by the previous solutions. So talking a little bit about the solution, we offer an end-to-end system that starts with the IoT sensors or the hardware sensors. um, these hardware sensors are developed and manufactured by us, but we also allow to integrate with third party sensors or existing infrastructure, right? Customers have already invested in a lot of hardware technologies over the last 5 years, 10 years, and the real benefits from the system are in terms of the analysis you do on the data. So if there are hardware equipment available that can provide you the data, the idea is to integrate all of those hardware nodes. And then on the middle layer, once we have the data that comes in, that's where the proprietary core component kicks in. Those are the advanced analytics which we have developed with specific customer pain areas in mind, right? So once these analytics are run, once the results are identified, we finally provide the results on a visualization environment, which is on a visualization environment, which is simplicity driven and so on, which I can explain further on. On the left hand side, the little image, it just highlights a few of the algorithms that we do, and I'll talk in detail about each of them as well. Right. So in a nutshell, this is the technology that we provide. So now let's going into each of those three stages. We will start with the IoT sensors. So on the IoT sensors side, the two sensors that we have manufactured on our own are mainly the seed and the stem. So the seed device is the one on the left, which is it's a modular DIN rail mounted IoT sensor. This IoT sensor mainly monitors power quality and digital status of electricity feeders. So it's an end-to-end monitoring unit for individual electricity lines, right? And then it comes with inbuilt communication protocols and all of that, communication medium, sorry. And then the device on the right is a very similar device to the seed, but the stem device, the one on the right, the stem is mainly focused on monitoring assets, such as the power transformer, and the stem also monitors the power quality features, the digital inputs, the digital statuses, such as your fans and pumps or so on, and it also measures your operational parameters like your transformer temperature, the oil level, and so on. Right. The device comes in an IP67 box, so it's ruggedized for outdoor installations, and it's an end-to-end asset monitoring unit, as what I can say. So diving a little deeper into the hardware sensors. And then this is a few key features. I hope you can read them because they're quite small in font. But anyone who's interested, please reach out to us and we can share the data sheets, or they're also available on the websites. So talking about the STEM device, so the STEM device, it comes with, of course, both devices do 100 to 240 volt AC inputs, or you can also have a DC input to the device as well with a DC-DC converter. Then in terms of the inputs, the STEM device provides 6 digital inputs, whereas the seed provides 12. And then because the seed is expandable, we can also add another digital input card to it. Both the seed and stem, they do direct measurements of currents and voltages. What that means is that we can take in if it's a substation, you can take the PT secondary, which would be 110 volt AC directly into the device. And on the current measurement, we use either clamp-on CTs or the Rogowski coils to directly monitor the current on the feeder or the transformer outgoing. What benefit that provides mainly is that we are able to collect the required data without having dependency on other devices and get that data to provide the analytics, right? So if there are already energy meters in place, or if there are RTUs in place, then we can directly take the data from there as well over industry protocols like your Modbus and so on. And then both of these devices, they come with inbuilt Wi-Fi and cellular, as well as an RS485 port for Modbus integration. Hides that part of the PD. Okay, sure, we can do that as well. I'll just make this smaller. So that's good. Okay, so these are the hardware sensors that we have. Again, the stem is the one for the power transformers. The seed is the one for the distribution feeders. And if anyone requires any more information on the devices, we can definitely share across a data sheet. So once the measurements are done in the on the device end, how is it that we communicate to the cloud? And this is where the differentiating factor comes in, right? So because our devices are IoT enabled devices, they all work on HTTP REST APIs. On that, so our IoT utilizes existing reliable and ever expanding cellular networks for low risk, high yield monitoring of distribution grids. So typically we are from the devices to the cloud platform. It's over cellular or Wi-Fi with the protocol on either HTTP or on MQTT, depending on the customer requirements. So if you're doing an end-to-end deployment, traditionally we have been doing it on our own HTTP REST APIs. And then if the integration is required, then we can do it over MQTT and so on as well. So once the data comes in, we have two major platforms. Two front ends for our platform, the Grid Analytics platform, as we call it. View 1 is the admin portal, which is the device and system configuration tool, and that is mainly used by the administrators of the customer to create the hierarchy of the system, to do the settings on the devices and so on, to do over the air upgradations if required of the firmware and so on. And then we have a data visualization portal through which you can see the real-time data, the historic data, as well as the alerts, the predictions, or any other outputs from the algorithms. Um, so moving on, going a little more deeper into the protocol stack. So this is the protocol stack that, as such that we've implemented. Currently, we are an IPv4 based infrastructure, but we do have plans of IPv6 and 6LoWPAN. These are we've tried and tested on them, but they're still in the trial phases. Our communication, like I mentioned earlier, is on Wi-Fi cellular. Sorry, the identifications are through URL based, HTTP based identifiers. So they can be accessed from anywhere in the world with a simple internet connection and a smartphone or any web enabled device. The discovery on the devices end is using a MDNS host, and then of course that's a different discussion. Data protocol, like I mentioned, is HTTP REST APIs, and the device management we do over the air device management and updates again over HTTP. And finally, of course, the underlying semantic is all in JSON format. All our REST APIs are SSL encrypted with HTTPS endpoints. They are also they have the OAuth authentication on the APIs as well. So moving on, once the data comes into the platform, we do all the analytics and so on. Just a quick brief about the software or the analytics platform. What we realize is that from legacy automation systems that traditionally have really large screens and multi-screen kind of control centers that show a lot of data without really and leaving it to the operators to decide what to do with the data. We try to create a software that is very focused on alerts, and it is completely 100% customizable on the web and the mobile. So the interface provides all the different alerts or the anomalies that are detected or predicted in the system with good explanation and charts as to why these alerts have been detected or predicted. And then, of course, if the customer is interested in only looking at the reports, then the reports are also customized and configured in the system to see all sorts of different reports, from reliability to the energy data and so on. Dashboard with minimum learning curve. So coming to the core part of our technology offering. This core, the core component is nothing but the utility relevant insights or the algorithms that we have developed, and I'll go through each of them. So starting with the first one, which is focused on fault management. So fault management is it's an end-to-end system is what I would say. So from the devices that we measured, from the energy data that we look at or the digital status that get logged into the system, we are able to classify. First, we're able to detect when there's a fault. We're able to classify what type of faults they are, and then once you have this information, you can calculate all sorts of reliability indices such as your SID, SIFI, and so on. With the correct configurations, you can also tell we can also tell what type of fault it is from the status of protection relays to know whether these are overcurrent faults or earth faults or so on. And I'll go vertically down. So the next one, which speaks about, is the statutory limit violation. The statutory limit violation is nothing but limits that have been defined by the grid code or the regulator. So through our prediction models, we are able to in fact inform our customers when if there are any predicted voltage fluctuations to happen, mainly in rural parts of the grid, where the distance from the transformer becomes much larger, we are able to predict and let them know when we can have voltage fluctuations in place. Taking the it's an application as what I would say, it's an application on the forecasting tool that we have as an underlying base for majority of the loads. For the electricity theft is also very similar to the limit violation algorithm. The electricity theft also looks at the demand forecasting or the forecasted data, looking at the forecasted data versus the actual consumption that has happened, and along with that, understanding what type of consumer are we looking at, what day of the week are we looking at, what how is the consumption with relevance to last year's consumption and so on. We are able to understand whether the sudden increase in the demand is whether is because of an abnormal is because of an anomaly, manual anomaly, or whether it is just because of system dynamics in place. The energy forecasting is a simple long short-term memory kind of forecast. How our forecast differs from the other most other competitors is that our forecast requires minimal data. So we can do accurate forecasting with 4 to 6 weeks of data at max. So these are it's a very light forecast that can be run on very minimal data to provide accurate results. Other insights mainly on the load transfer alternative. The load transfer alternative is a traditional distribution management like a SCADA DMS option, where we're looking, if you're monitoring multiple feeders in a vicinity, you can understand whether a particular feeder or a particular asset is overloaded while the other assets are underloaded, and whether the grid network can allow for transferring of some of the load from an overloaded line to an underloaded line, and so on. So that's what that is. Moving on to asset permissible loading. So asset permissible loading is a feature that we developed very specifically for power transformers. So for power transformers, mainly the idea was to understand, looking at the current consumption, the current loading on the transformer, predicting the future loading on the transformer, looking at the current temperatures on the transformer, and then being able to predict whether the future load will be sustained by the transformer, or will the transformer go in an overloaded condition to satisfy the increase, the peak increase on the demand side. So through that, we are able to understand, how much loading should the customers or the grid companies do on their individual assets. And taking that logic one stage further is, once we understand when assets are in overload conditions, we can, using the Synapse model, we can also predict or do a life estimation on that particular transformer. So a life estimation or residual life estimation is a lot more complex than that. But then this feeds into as one of the multivariable inputs that can be fed to understand what are the RLE of each asset. Then for the RLEs, we also look at what are the historic faults on that, what were the types, the materials of the assets, and so on. So that's that. Another area which is very very close to us is in terms of understanding these low carbon technology integrations. So here mainly what is happening is that we all can appreciate that even though we are talking about DARs coming into the grid and electric vehicles and solar installations and so on, they are not going to come in uniformly across the entire grid network. Traditionally, what's going to happen is that we will have pockets of consumers that are the early adopters of these technologies, and that's so at that stage it's going to be vital for grid companies to understand whether the existing infrastructure can sustain the new loads that are coming in, or whether any reinforcements are required on the network. So through our LCD integration algorithm, we basically predict how much headroom is available on the network in the current scenario, and whether that headroom will be able to suffice general consumer patterns, or whether that those pattern changes would require any reinforcements to ensure that there's no grid collapse or a network outage in those areas. Finally, then moving on to more simplistic algorithms, simple things like benchmarking and comparative analysis. So, our consumers, the grid companies, largely have a tremendous asset base, and understanding which are your better performing assets from your worst performing assets is very important in terms of planning your maintenance as well as your replacement strategies. So instead of doing this analysis or doing this replacement strategy based on human gut feelings, doing it data driven based on a real time data with maybe 15 minutes, half an hour data frequency provides a lot better results in terms of planning. And then finally, we've also implemented our forecasting tool on the generation side. On the generation side, we basically look to predict how much day ahead solar generation is true, as well as intraday hourly forecast also can be done. The idea here being that, again, the multivariable, looking at temperature data, looking at your cloud cover and so on, you can accurately predict what level of renewable generation is projected in the system. So these are our utility relevant algorithms. And again, if anyone's interested to understand more on these algorithms, please visit our websites. We published multiple case studies where we've implemented the statutory limit violation forecasting tool, as well as all the other ones in place. In fact, there is a parallel a SIGRE conference that is going on in Paris, but because of COVID, it's entirely online. And Oxagrid has published two papers, technical papers during this conference. One of the papers was a case study on that utilized our electricity theft algorithm when we did a small pilot case with BEST in Mumbai. So for their vigilance department, we are helping them classify anomalies and try to understand whether these anomalies are because of illegal consumption as such. So yeah, feel free to look at those case studies as well. Moving on. So moving on, now we'll talk about some of the industry specific insights or algorithms that we have tried and tested to solve specific challenges or quickly tie into other solutions. So on the industry perspective, or where we have large energy consumers, they're mainly the lowering, like having a strong energy management system and being able to understand the trends in consumption, and thereby taking suggestive decisions in how to lowering the energy expense becomes extremely critical. So starting again from the top left, talking and going through each of the algorithms. So energy mix is mainly for your large consumers that have multiple sources of energy coming in. So they would be grid connected, that would be supplying electricity through the distribution company. They would probably also be purchasing electricity off the electricity exchange, where it could be spot purchases. They could also be having a cogeneration plant or a distributed rooftop solar kind of an installation. So understanding what is the ideal combination of these power sources is very important for from an energy from a consumer perspective, and that's what our energy mix helps to identify and understand how much of each source should you have. So if you're if as as an industrial client you are considering whether to install rooftop solar, for example, then you can make use of the our solar PV app that would help that would help the industry to understand how much generation will happen on the roof that is available. But not just how much generation will happen, but more importantly, looking at your last 1 year consumption, it will also tell you how much, what is the most economical sizing of your solar PV that you should be doing. So even if you have a very large roof, and your consumption can be minimized because there's a capital investment that is involved with doing the solar installation. So having a lower installation and then making use of other energy mix could also probably lower your electricity bill. And then that ties in with the next two algorithms that we want to talk about. That is mainly contract power optimization as well as time of use optimization. So contract power optimization is something that we worked on heavily in the UK. I'm not sure whether we've done much in India on this, but the idea is that the consumer is allowed to select what contract he wishes to be on. So looking at his energy data, he can say that okay, I want to be in plan A versus plan B, and helping out with the decision between the plans is what we work towards. Going to time of use optimization, that is mainly because the regulators have different charges for different time of use of electricity. We can also, if production schedules can be minimized or optimized, sorry, if production schedules can be optimized to provide a lower electricity bill, then that's what this works on. If our analytics is given access to an ERP data, which is mainly looking at what is the per day manufacturing throughput that is happening in the manufacturing halls, then we can associate the energy usage with unit output and provide that as a benchmarking analysis to the energy manager in the industry to be able to benchmark the various performances of the various manufacturing halls in that. The other one after that is the statutory limit or the statutory requirements. This is mainly statutory requirements is mainly to it recommends if there are any violations that are happening, and mainly these work around power factor violations that happen on the industrial side, and then whether doing an installation of a capacitor bank is the solution, or just having a more balanced load will solve the problems, and so on. So that's what that does. Energy forecasting, like I mentioned earlier, that's the baseline algorithm that we use for all our applications of algorithms. The energy forecasting, like I said before, it's a neural network, and it works on multiple different techniques. But the one that we have found most success has been with the long short term memory, and that gives us a very good mean average error, percentage errors, and things like that. Other algorithms mainly on the loss detection. So if you're monitoring a network or a small infra, you can with simple energy accounting, you can also understand if there are losses, or if there are more consumption that is happening in certain lines than the rest of the lines, and then comparing it with the output from those lines, we can understand whether there are losses on the network, or whether it requires further optimization on the network. Peak crossing and load distribution, that is mainly to again do a benchmarking analysis to understand if a certain feeder is being overloaded at all times, is there a way to move some of that peak to a different time or to a different feeder, thereby having a more uniform consumption, which could help in terms of lowering electricity bills. uh, Tariff scheme suggestions. So to identify optimal tariff scheme given electricity consumption patterns. So this is again ties in with the contract power optimization and the time of use optimization in the algorithm. Okay. So after looking at what the technology is in terms of what we offer, the standard question must be like, yes, I've seen and heard all of this before. There are many companies in the market that are doing this kind of activities. So what differentiates us from them, right? So what is the Oxagrid advantage? The advantage that we provide is that we do proactive, flexible, and simplicity-driven suggestions to our customers that stands apart from our competition. To dive a little deeper into what this statement means, we can look at who we are, right? So Oxagrid is a global company with proprietary technology and a socially driven mission. Our partnership with Scope is provides us with the ability to train our algorithms on 30 plus years of proprietary data using real world asset health and energy data validated by leading AI universities and something that is patent applied. So our prediction models, they are tested on 30 plus years of data. They are validated by universities which with whom we have tie-ups both in the UK and in India, and is something that we've already also applied for a patent. In India, we work very closely with VJTI Institute in Mumbai. In the UK, we work closely with London South Bank University as well as University of Reading, and so on. We have an established base in EU and India. So because of this, it provides us with the flexibility of working in multiple time zones. It gives us access to more local talent globally, and also makes us understand the challenges of one market and learnings from one market that can be used in another market. So that really helps us in also catering to a wider problem statement, mainly. Finally, we are also very proud of our team. Our team is split between Russia, India, UK, and at some point we also had members from working from Africa, and we've really embraced the digital working culture. So that has really helped us to be a global focused company. Finally, in terms of our values and what we mentioned earlier as well, we believe that we are a team over an individual, progress over perfection. So there's continuous development and continuous enhancement, and consumer needs over wants, and that's the most important philosophy that we follow. Finally, we work as a startup for trying to focus on a global market. Our focus is very much on partner networks. So we have a strong partner network across the world. We have partners in Mexico. We have a good base here in India, and so on. Sales in our sector has a lot of high entry barriers, but an efficient supply chain and a low cost manufacturing with the right partner to overcome the entry barriers puts us at a strong advantage over our competition. Looking at the competitive landscape, our competition analysis, we were able to classify our main competitors into three categories. The three categories that we talk about are, starting from the left, is the data analytics companies. These are very similar to Oxagrid in terms of focused on using data science to provide insights to our consumers to improve their efficiency. So that's one category of customers. The second category of customers are the hardware companies that specialize in providing all the monitoring hardware. for the data acquisition part. And then there are companies which are the conditioned software companies. These are traditionally the established legacy companies that have had automation softwares or from the last 100 years with slow upgradations in terms of systems. On the left, we've tried to identify a few competitive points which we think are very important. Aspects from remote communication and remote management to end-to-end data security, because in today's day and age, cybersecurity is the most critical aspect. And even though I realize that I don't have a slide here to have spoken about cybersecurity, there are a few noteworthy points to highlight, and this is our relationship with the VJTI Institute as well. We do continuous pen testing on our system. We try to adopt all the latest compliances that are in place, from your NERC compliance to in the UK in the US, sorry, with the certain certifications in India. We are always focused on providing end-to-end data security, because we understand that the biggest reservations for our customers to migrate to using cloud computing and AI based insights, even though they provide a lot of advantage, is the fear of having cyber attacks. And if anyone is more interested in learning more about cybersecurity, we are more than happy to. We are preparing a white paper on the same, and we are more than happy to share that across with everyone. Moving on, there's real-time dashboards that's simple, that we provide. Interoperability, which is also important, because there are so many protocols from so many different hardware companies that having access to data means having 100% interoperability. That's what we believe in. Cost-effective and grid scale rollout, so they should be easily scalable, and then very customer-specific problem statements. So a customer in India would have a different problem statement than a customer in the UK or so on, and thereby being able to tweak our systems to cater to those issues is what we strongly believe in. And I've just mentioned very few, such as asset optimization, fault management, and theft. But we just had a lengthy discussion on each of the algorithms that we do provide in Oxycode. So moving on, finally, the Oxycode advantage also talks about, here I want to also touch base on the pricing strategies that we offer. As a startup that's interested in solving customer pain areas, we've tried to be as flexible as we can with our engagement. So we can utilizing existing sensor data is one option, or we can provide a full stack solution that includes the hardware, the platform, as well as the software. Or we could do a hybrid solution wherein we have legacy monitoring hardware and SCADA systems, and we only provide the DMS or the algorithms to provide the alerts and the insights. So we could do single deployments of individual algorithms as well. And then finally, as an early engagement, we also do we can also be engaged in through consulting. And through consulting, basically what we do is where we do a monthly contract wherein we only provide you the final reports or the so we'll do all the data analysis from discrete data sources, compile it into a report, and that report can be shared with the management or with customers to understand what is it that happened in the last month, what is it that what were the goods, the bads, and the highlights, and what changes we should take for getting you X percentage revenue returns, and so on. So we've completed so far. We've completed looking at the challenges in the market. We've completed looking at the solutions that are there in the market, the solution that Oxycode offers, and the advantage that Oxycode provides to its customers. Now, to consolidate all of these points, we'll also look at some success stories. that we've implemented, and I've just picked and chosen a few of them. So with that, we'll start with our six flagship projects, as what I can say. Sorry. So Oxagrid is already working with utilities and large energy consumers on data-led projects. So with Mahadiscom, we did a project where we were monitoring about 14 numbers of their primary distribution networks. This kind of deployment is something that a typical SCADA system is utilized, but we did the entire system through IoT and cloud computing. There's a different slide for the Mahadiscom project. The other project that we did was about the statutory limit violation. So this was with a utility in the UK called Western Power Distribution on a innovation project that they were doing, and then we were subcontracted for developing of this algorithm specifically. Then moving on, in terms of industrial consumers, one of the first implementations that we did was for Scope, where we were looking at the energy consumption of Scope's factory, where Scope was looking to do rooftop solar installations. So analyzing the 1 year data and looking at manufacturing patterns and so on, we were able to use that as a case study to develop a lot of our algorithms. Looking at transformer load analysis, transformer monitoring is something that we have focused on over the last 3 years. We've done multiple installations across multiple transformers. But in this particular case, with the Tata logo, was a solar park in Bikaner. So it was Tata Projects. They were operating I think it was a grid scale solar park with maybe 4-5 megawatts or something. And we were monitoring their step up transformers to understand if how well the transformer loading was being conducted. Along with that, we also did a project on cable health assessment. So our cable health assessment was mainly for underground cables. This was a problem statement given to us by Schneider Electric, and then the solution was also implemented in a Danish utility called EV. Here, mainly the challenges, and I think this challenge is also very relevant to all discoms, but mainly in a city like Mumbai, where I live. We have a large underground cable network, but the only things that have gone underground are not electricity lines. Along with electricity lines, you have drainage systems, you have telecom lines, you have fiber network. Everything is going underground in its own space. And then every time there's road digging for any reason, unfortunately, you might end up damaging cable A or so on. And the most prominent solution that is available in the market are cable fault locators, something that Scope also provides in terms of vans and so on. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to understand if we can use data to provide a maintenance strategy to our discoms, wherein they don't have to wait for a cable to reach failure for them to do a cable fault locator kind of testing. And at the same time, they shouldn't be. There's no way that they can check each and every cable section in the network. So using big data through for this Danish company, we were able to actually classify their entire cable sections into health index bands between health index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So health index 5 is best. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to even look at it. And health index 1 is the most dangerous ones, wherein they require immediate maintenance. And then once you have this classification done, then you can take in your specialized maintenance tools like your CFL van or your partial discharge monitoring equipment and so on, and then monitor only those lines that are in the most risky cable sections. this algorithm was, I mean, I'm explaining it in a very in a very simplistic manner, but for EV we also went one stage further, where we were not only classifying them into health index bands, but we were also looking at what is the probability of failure, and as well as the consequence of failure. So a cable section that is providing electricity to a hospital would be valued at a more risk than a cable section that was, say, supplying electricity to a residential building, and so on. So it required a lot of discrete data sets from a lot of discrete sources, and then comparing everything together and putting it into simple health index bands that could then be used by the testing companies or the grid operators to do their specialized activity. So that was the cable health assessment project. And then the theft detection solution. This for We were actually awarded a grant from the UK government to develop this technology in collaboration with a university in the UK. And then this entire system was also developed, patented, and deployed to trial consumers, of which one of them is DST in Mumbai. So going forward, looking at a few of the case studies, let's start by talking about Mahavitran, or the Mahadiscom project. The main idea here for Mahadiscom was they wanted a cost-effective solution for doing substation monitoring, right? And they understand. I mean, of course, Mahadiscom is one of the largest utilities in the world. So they understand the cost involved in doing a traditional RTU based RTU based substation monitoring, having some sort of communication mediums to get the data into a remote centralized system, and then being able to run any of the DMS applications. It's very expensive. So in discussion with Scope, Mahadiscom has did a pilot project in rural part of India, in a low network area zone, wherein we were monitoring 14 substations. We are monitoring all the energy and the digital status for incoming and outgoing feeders. So these are 33 by 11 kV feeders. Power transformers. So end-to-end transformer monitoring for each of the 24 power transformers. That was looking at the transformer loading, the winding temperature, oil temperature, OLTC, the on-load tap changers, that status, and so on. And it was also doing DC monitoring, the substation DC battery banks monitoring as well. All of this data was being uh, acquired through our seed and stem IoT sensors, and then it was being pushed to a central data center in which was at Mahadiscom's data center at Prakashgarh. And from there, then the access was given to all the users who were mentioned by Mahadiscom. So it was a mobile first, with email integration and SMS integrations, and all of that all done. So some of the benefits that were seen in this project, some of the benefits that were seen are mentioned here. The daily log sheets that were maintained by substation operators in rural India, and we all know how those log sheets are maintained on an hourly so-called basis, were all automated to provide hourly as well as sub-hourly sheets that can be downloaded on demand for any time since in the last 5 years. I mean, of course, the system is only 2 years old, but with the contract period saying that we can keep the data for 5 years is on the systems. We do energy accounting at the substation level, which is incoming minus outgoing, energy accounting at the transformer level, so again, incomer and outgoing, and as well as energy accounting at the subdivision levels is also configured in the system. Minimum maximum values is something simple to configure and provide. The minimum maximums are then configured to provide violations and alerts. We've also implemented the reliability calculations like SID, SIFI, which can be done at a feeder level, substation level, and so on. We've implemented DIDO statuses. Sorry, no output controls, only digital input controls were required. So that was to monitor power transformers, to monitor breaker and relay status, and understand what are breakdowns, what are manual load shedding, what are all the different classifications that come into place. Um, Along with that, we've done a status of station DC. So we actually monitor the DC voltage and current, and then alert the system operator in case the DC is the DC network fails in the substation, because the DC is most critical for ensuring that trippings and things like that happen on time. Then energy and feeder profiles, yes. Facility to time synchronize. So we do time synchronize the data center server with the GPS server, and then each of the sensors are in turn synchronized with the central software. Very similar to how a typical RTU and SCADA control center SCADA deployments happen. Moving on, again, of course, reporting of violations through emails and SMS, like I mentioned, and then finally, we also have complete open APIs for integrations with other MSCDCL systems, which can come into place, and then cybersecurity was also ensured through encryptions. Moving on to another pilot that we did. This was for BSES. Of course, we've done transformer monitoring across the board in industrial consumers as well as grid companies. But here, particularly, I'm talking about an installation we did for BSES in Delhi. So this is BSES Yamuna. So it was a simple system. It's a simple diagram that shows what is it that we do. We install a STEM device that does all of these measurements. So whether it is feeder current monitoring, the outage monitoring, the oil temperatures, oil level, lug temperature, any temperatures that are there on the transformers, as well as the loading on the transformer, all those inputs are acquired and then sent to the cloud platform. And then once the data is on the cloud, we show it on the end, the web tools. Few indications of how is it that we did the monitoring. So for the voltage and current measurements, for voltage, we tapped the bushings directly. We tapped the bushing through a voltage tap to get the readings of that. Since this was these are secondary transformers, these are 11 kV by 440 volts. So the phase voltage is only 220 volt, which is directly taken into our device. The current measurements, because these are at 440 volt side, the currents are typically very high per phase, maybe 200, 300 amperes or even more. So the best way to do this is by using a Rogowski coil, which provides you the flexibility of clamping onto any tight network. But not only flexibility of clamping, but also provides you very high measurement without the problem of saturation. So if you implement a CT, there's a big chance that the CT will get saturated at high currents, whereas a Rogowski coil will also allow you to do fault current measurements. So you can go all the way up till 10,000 amperes, Rogowski coils as well. In this particular photo, what I wanted to show was that the per phase there were two outgoing feeders that were coming out, and this is quite typical in a lot of transformer installations. So Rogowskis can also help you to combine the loads of multiple lines that are coming out of the same phase as well. Moving on to oil level and oil temperature, the photo is not too clear, but like you can see, we do direct installation of our sensors, so to get the most reliable and accurate readings. So for oil level, we install it in the conservator tank, the cap of the conservator tank, the same input point where the oil is filled. That's where we install it. So if an oil replacement is required, we just remove the oil level sensor, replace the oil or refill the oil, and then put the sensor back on, just like a cap. For oil temperature, this was again something that we had to study a lot of different transformers across that have been installed across the various discoms. What we traditionally understand is that a lot of transformers typically have spare pockets available, and then just understanding the diameter and the thread sizes, we customize the fixture for installing the oil temperature, the PT1000 input into it. And here I also want to highlight another thing that is not being mentioned through the photos. We also have implemented an IEEE standard formula for deducing the oil temperature and the winding hotspot temperature based on transformer loading and the surface temperature. So this algorithm also provides you a result which is up till 2% accuracy is in reality what we have measured, whereas the oil temperature indicators provide you a 1% accuracy. So it's very much similar in line for high loading, low loading of transformers and all across the aspects. By installing surface temperature sensors, we reduce the cost of installation drastically. We reduce the outage time required on these critical transformers drastically, and we provide you with the same accuracy for the results. So if you are interested in doing only temperature monitoring to understand your hotspot temperatures on your secondary transformers, which are not being monitored through historically just because of the cost factors and so on, by implementing our temperature algorithm, we can do this at a very economical cost. And again, this white paper is available on our website, and I would love to share it with anyone who's interested. Moving on to OLTC position measurement. Moving on to OLTC position measurement. Yeah, that is simple, mainly for more primary transformers, like your 33 by 11 kV, where there's a lot of on-load tap changing. So we directly get the resistive measurements to understand what tap the current, the current tap on the transformer, and that can also be then reported to the grid operators to increase or reduce the same. Lug and tank temperature, also very simple. These are just PT100 inputs that can be installed on either of the lugs and so on. And then of course all digital inputs through CMR content multiplying relays, where we can take in all these inputs from various points and then display those to any remote customer as well. This is a project that we did with the Danish company EV, and what I was explaining earlier, I forgot that this slide was there from before, but yes, this was the risk analysis that we did for underground cables to really understand what all were the problems we looked at something like 10,000 cable sections, and we were able to classify 10,000 cable sections into health index bands, so that you could prioritize on which asset base required for the maintenance. In the interest of time, I'll just go ahead. This is again the voltage violation project that we did for the UK distribution company, and this was mainly to understand if there are any voltage fluctuations, to predict those fluctuations and take remedial actions before the grid operator or the regulator penalizes the discoms. So it's a cost saving mechanism as well. Okay, and sorry, I'm just going ahead. Another few other questions. These are just sample photos. The photo on the left is the transformer monitoring unit stem, which has a backplate, a magnetic backplate, which helps you to mount it on any metallic surface. And it also comes with nuts and bolts if we desire to drill it in. Similarly, this is the seat device, which is DIN-rail mounted, and it's basically installed inside any control panel on the substation. A few more photos of our device under testing. This is how modular the device is. It's very similar to the seat. This is a stem box which is IP67 protected. And then we do all our testing through calibrated sources. And in this particular photo, we can also see a relay test kit that we have implemented, so that we could run different logics and see how how accurately the devices can detect and alert the system. So with that, that comes to an end of my presentation. I know there are a lot of potential customers in the audience as well as a few of our existing clients. And for next steps, for a successful cooperation, what we from our end we tell to our audience is that we want to do we are very flexible in terms of the different revenue slides that I had shown to you. We can engage in simple consulting, which would be only looking at discrete data sets to provide you with actionable insights, or we can do from that consulting to all the way to an end-to-end deployment, and in between with all the interoperabilities and existing hardware, we are quite flexible. So we just want to get your technical approvals on what to do it, appoint a representative team, and get the project kick-started. So with that, I'll say thank you for spending the last 1 hour listening to me, and let's spend the next 10-15 minutes on question and answers. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have at this stage. And if there are questions that have already been asked, then my colleagues can help me. I think most of them have also been answered by Akshat and other people. But are there any specific questions that are left to answer? Sanket? I see that Rajendra Girase sir, you mentioned something that fuse blown on LT feeder is possible. I don't understand if that's a question or a statement, but in terms of fuse blowing on LT feeders, since we are monitoring real-time energy, we can immediately explain when there's a fuse blown on that. Second thing is that if you are specifically talking about feeder pillars on the distribution, matlab on your LT network, then we have a solution, a multi-feeder solution, which we can also deploy for the feeder pillars. So on these feeder pillars, we mainly use a lot of digital inputs. So these are potential DIs that look at that as soon as the fuse gets blown, it will tell you that, okay, this DI is operated and that DI has operated. So so the repair team, the service team can go to the correct feeder pillar instead of patrolling the entire LT line. So that will in terms help to reduce the downtime and repair the fault at a very quick instance. So yes, that is also possible. Okay. Sorry, is there anybody else out here? Maya side, BR, Sanket?
I think, Yash, there was one question from Mr. Girase.
Yeah.
Is it having IEC 104 support? I think that is yet not answered, so that you can answer.
Acha.
Yeah. Hi, Akshat here. Actually, I've answered all the questions that were there. Some of the questions are answered in the private mode. So I think that IEC question was probably answered in the private mode. So I can convert that to the group mode, but basically the answer was that the device comes with the HTTPS support, which are the IoT protocols, and it also has an RS-485 port so that we can measure by using Modbus protocols. Now, if there are energy meters that are specifically on IEC 104 protocol, then what we do is on the software side, we have a way of integrating this IEC inputs. So we have a protocol converter on the software side. So any devices that are communicating over IEC 104 protocol, we can convert that on the software side, and then we can display the insights and the real-time data on the software. So in that case, we will not be deploying the devices, seed and step devices. We will simply be integrating the existing infrastructure that is already available and displayed on the software side.
Right.
We also ran 2 polls here. I don't know if you got to see the results, Yash.
Okay.
I think you've got fairly good answers for the polls. I think once the webinar ends, you can see the results. But I can share with you the first poll we ran was on. The first one was, how soon do you think IoT will be a commonplace for energy optimization? So, and there were 5 answers, 5 options. First one was, it already is. So that's 33% said it already is. Most people said that it will be commonplace in 2 years' time, within 2 years' time. Second popular answer was, it already is, 33%. The third popular answer was at least 5 years. But the good thing is that nobody said that it will take over 5 years or it will never happen. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page and we think that IoT will be an important technology that will be implemented for energy optimization, both on the energy grid side as well as on the industrial side as well. So that's the first insight that we got, and I wanted to share with everybody who's present here. We also had a second one about what are the present challenges that IoT can be most suitable for. So here again, we had 5 options that we had put. The most popular ones were energy management. So 31% said energy management, and also 31%, exactly the same amount number, said asset predictive maintenance. So these seem to be the most present challenges that IoT can be suitable for. Third one was energy losses analytics. So basically using IoT to determine how much technical and commercial losses are there on the energy network. And very few people, 5% and 7%, said that it will be useful for power outage management and low carbon integration. So these are low carbon as in trying to figure out how do we bring in solar and storage and so on onto the grid network. These are probably future challenges, but at least the present ways, the two most important ones are energy management systems, probably on the industrial side, and asset predictive maintenance. So maintaining your transformers and motors and so on using IoT. So thanks again for everyone who took part in those 2 polls. I hope these insights were useful for everyone who's present. If you notice, if you go to there are files, there's a files option here. Anyone who's attending, you can go to the files section and download the data sheets for the devices. Because I just saw a question from Mr. Sachin. So in the files, you will see the data sheets. Also, if you go on the website, I can drop in the website here. On the website, under the solutions page, you will see the data sheets for the software and hardware side. And if you go to the About Us page and scroll down to the success stories, over there, you can check out the case studies that Yash was talking about. So various case studies we have put there on industrial energy management systems, solar parks, as well as asset maintenance and LV automation.
Yeah, good, Akshat. I think there are no other questions, I think, which are unanswered. So if there are any questions, you can always get back to us. Maybe we can just put the address of our marketing, so that if there are any questions, you can always subsequently get in touch with us.
Yeah.
So with this, shall we call it a day?
If there are any more questions, then I can stay on for another couple of minutes. If there are any questions, you can drop in. Otherwise, yeah, I think. Thank you for.
But before we close, let me remind the audience about the next topic on which we'll be having the webinar. As most of you will be knowing, we are conducting 2 different series of webinars. One is this Substation Saturdays, on which our next topic is going to be world's most accurate numerical protection relay series from Arctech Finland, that is being brought to you by Scope. So that will happen on Saturday, 5th of September. And there is another series that we are running, which is exclusively for the users of the scope products, mainly our testing and measuring instruments. And for that, on Friday, 4th of September, we have a product, transformer winding resistance measurement instruments, basically the TRM series of products from scope. So that is exclusively for the existing users of scope. So these are the two upcoming events that we have planned. Of course, there is a calendar of these events up to September end, which is already published. You will be receiving the mailers and the information again from us. And the topics for the next quarter will also be shared with you at least a month in advance. So keep on looking for the information flyers from Scope on mails as well as on the social media to understand what are the latest webinar topics that Scope is going to bring to you. So with this, yes, thank you very much. Your presentation was quite, content rich, and I think this is a new area and exciting future. So as we move forward, we are going to understand or unearth more and more power of this particular technology and these solutions. So to our customers, we request that keep on making demands on us, and it will be our endeavor to live up to your expectations. So with this, to all participants, thank you very much for taking your time out and spending your time with us. Thank you and have a good evening and